It's the Raymond Simms Show on the Coliseum Sports Network.
This is the beat that I used to use for when I was doing the Raymond Simms Show as a podcast on one of my over on the free WordPress back at the end of my college days. It's the instrumental or a modified instrumental to Acid Rain by local Chicago rapper Chance the Rapper. Wonderful song, and I just love the beat to it. And I wanted to use it for what was in my podcast, and now I'm trying to see if I can use it for my show without it, it getting a third-party content match once it gets shipped over to YouTube, once it gets archived on YouTube. But I love that beat. Almost makes me want to freestyle. It reminds me, I saw on my own Facebook timeline that Big Crit, Southern rapper named Big Crit, put out something very recently, probably yesterday or the day before. I did not know he was putting out anything new, which is on me because Big Crit is so wonderful that I should have known that he was going to be, putting out something very soon. He's such a hard worker. So I got to check that out. And if you like hip hop, good hip hop, then you should probably check that out as well. But that's neither here nor there. This is the Raymond Simms Show on the Coliseum Sports Network. I am Raymond Simms, of course, and I'm glad that you're joining me today. I'm going to level with you. This is probably going to be another short show, partly because of the lack of hard-hitting news to cover today. Of course, I could always go on about any number of subjects that are happening in the different major sports leagues, but it's a little light on the news today since the college football playoff rankings don't come out until later tonight. And then at the same time, I do have some work related to SimmsColiseum.com, which this show is sponsored by. I do have some work that I need to finish up on as far as the website is concerned. So I want to get to that on this light news day as soon as possible. So the show's going to be a little light here, but I still want to get out here and talk to you guys today about different things that are happening in the world of sports today, namely the Colts and Giants game from last night. I know usually I'm not keeping my eyes glued to evening primetime football, but yesterday I had my finger on the pulse just a little bit more than I usually do as far as primetime games are concerned. So I want to talk about that. I'll talk to you about my fantasy team, so that you'll be able to feel my pain that I know a lot of you guys are probably feeling out there in terms of how your season is going. And it's the regular season part of it I know is almost over. So we can all wallow in sorrow about how bad our fantasy team is doing. And then also the one thing I also really want to get to today is Joe Madden finally being hired by the Chicago Cubs and getting a press conference here in Chicago yesterday. Of course, there was the speculation after Joe Madden had left Tampa Bay, and it was happening during the World Series. So the reports were like, yeah, he's coming to the Cubs. No, the Cubs said he's not. No, the Cubs are being quiet about this. Finally, they just come out with it, and they go ahead and hire him and formally introduce him as manager of the Chicago Cubs. It's exciting times on the north side, kind of indifferent times down here on the south side, but I do want to talk about it, and we will in just a little bit. But first, be sure to follow me on Twitter at Simms Coliseum, on Facebook. You can like the Simms Coliseum page, on Tumblr if you're into that stuff, if you're a teenager at heart. Simms Coliseum, that's the name over there on Tumblr. I reblog a lot of really cool, mostly basketball pictures, and it's really awesome to just see poetry in motion. That is photos of NBA players in motion. It's really awesome. I also reblog a bunch of fun sports stuff in general, maybe important pieces that I came across. You can find all that great action over on Tumblr. I'm all over the social medias here with the Coliseum, and of course, SimmsColiseum.com undergoing a editorial renovation, but it should be done very soon. I'm sure that you will enjoy it very much. It focuses more so on the sports fiction aspect of that website that I want to capture. So if you go over there now, I think the only article that is viewable is the welcome article that I did back when I opened up the site on July 2nd. But there's some drafts I got that I'm trying to get together and make sure that they're perfect before I publish them, and then they'll be out for public consumption. But just in the meantime, in the interim, if you want to go over there, patronize the site, I would appreciate it very much. The Colts and Giants faced off on Monday night yesterday, and it was not really a contest. The Colts, overcoming their beat 'em down last week against Ben Roethlisberger and the Pittsburgh Steelers, are able to deliver a beat 'em down of their own at MetLife Stadium, 40-24. So they improved their record to 6-3 and 3-2 on the road. The Giants, on the other hand, they've been struggling this season. They fall to 2-2 at home and a 3-5 overall record. And really, of course, the star of the game had to be Andrew Luck. 25 for 46, 354 yards, 4 touchdowns, and a QB rating of 108.4. The running game wasn't really needed, but when it was, it did well. 24 carries, 98 yards for all 4 of rushers that were indicated for the Colts. But the big news, the receiving core, there may not have been an individual stick-out star like Andrew Luck is, but there was a lot of catching going around. I mean, it takes 2 to tango when it comes to throwing the football. And when Luck was throwing it up in the air, a number of his receivers were bringing it down, including Kobe Fleener, 4 receptions for 77 yards and a TD. T.Y. Hilton, fantasy team, 3 receptions, 71 yards and a touchdown. Reggie Wayne, old reliable, 4 receptions, 70 yards, a touchdown. Dwayne Allen, 4 receptions, 48 yards, a touchdown. And then former Giants, Hakeem Nicks, 3 catches for 44 yards. And then Ahmad Bradshaw, who led the team in rushing, also got some catches out of the backfield as well. So just a great all-around game for the Indianapolis Colts. The final score was 40-24, but it wasn't even really that close, as the Giants were able to get 2 touchdowns in garbage time. It was really, when you think about it, 40-10. And that score came to be with the Adam Vinatieri field goal early in the fourth quarter. So from there, it was pretty much lights, but the Giants able to get a couple of touchdowns to make the box score look good. Except the box score maybe doesn't look all that good. Eli Manning, 27 for 52, 359 yards, 2 TDs. He didn't throw away the ball, but he was sacked 3 times for a QB rating of 86.9. And it's really hard to see a quarterback like Eli Manning, a man who won 2 Super Bowls, just struggle. See this Giants team struggle. They were so strong just not too long ago, and they were very exciting to watch. And it's always great to see a team with such historical significance do so well. But lately, it just hasn't come together around Eli Manning. Like, he's doing all that he can, and in the end, it's just not working out. I mean, you see who he's throwing the ball to. He's really starting to gain a rapport with his receivers, even with players like Victor Cruz out. Odell Beckham Jr. is just really showing out. He did in this game 8 receptions for 156 yards, though it didn't necessarily do a whole lot of good for the team's prospects in winning the game and generating offense. You also had touchdowns from Larry Donnell and Corey Washington in the game, and those came late, but they still came eventually. And that's kind of the key thing here, is that Eli Manning is connecting with his receivers, and they're finding the end zone at times, but the game was out of hand by that point. I guess there's a lot of blame that you can assess the defense, for one, for allowing 40 points, and maybe a lot of the injuries that have happened to the Giants again this year has kind of kept them from competing. But at the same time, you look at the NFC East, and you figured that even at this point, if they were to struggle, they would still be in it. But not this season. This is not one of those years where the NFC East is low, or having a down year. It's pretty much become a have and have not. You have Philadelphia and Dallas clearly at the top of the NFC East, and you have the Giants and Washington clearly at the bottom of the East. And so the fight for the NFC East title is essentially going to be a two-boat race. And that's pretty rough for a team like the Giants that you wanted to see, that a lot of people want to see do so well, unless you're a Jets fan or unless you're an NFC East fan. I'm sure the Eagles fans do not care at all, do you? On the other side, Indianapolis bouncing back from a rough loss, giving up a whole bunch of touchdowns, 51, against a quarterback that is admittedly just hot right now, like hotter than ever. You bounce back from that and you're able to go on the road and take care of business against the New York Giants. I think that's very admirable and shows a lot about what the Colts can bring once playoff time comes around, because they are going to the playoffs. It's just a matter of what their seeding's going to be. When you have a division like Indianapolis does that consists of Houston, who's a below 500, a Tennessee team that's trying to figure things out, and Jacksonville, who is the whipping boy for all of the NFL's jokes right now. Almost all of them, because quite a few of them go to the Jets and maybe a couple go to the Buccaneers, but still, when you have a division like that, it's pretty obvious that you're going to come out with the victory, especially when you got to face when those teams account for 6 of your games. It's kind of actually reminiscent of when the Colts had Peyton Manning under center. And I'm sure a lot of Colts fans find the Colts' success at quarterback reminiscent of when Peyton was there. So it was not that rough of a transition to go from Peyton Manning to Andrew Luck, though their styles may be different. Just the success that the Colts are finding is pretty much the same as it ever was. But it does remind me of Peyton Manning's time with the Colts, and how even back then, at least since 2002, with this current divisional alignment, the Colts were pretty much the runaway favorite in the division every year. Because Houston at the time, they were an expansion team. You have Jacksonville, who had their up and down years, but especially in recent history, they just haven't been able to figure it out when they've been struggling and they have new ownership. And even before then, when the ownership wanted to sell them off, they just haven't been good. And you have a Tennessee team that has its moments as well, but hasn't quite been the same in a number of years. The Colts were pretty much running away with the division, and here they are doing it again, but not just backing their way in. They are trying to show that they are a dominant team. They're trying to make their way to the Super Bowl. That's what this team is aiming towards. This is what they want to be built for. But it's just a matter of how much do they want it. And you have to believe that Indianapolis at least has a fair shake at the Super Bowl when you look at the AFC. Of course, you can't count out Denver and New England. I mean, they have Manning and Brady respectively. They're at the top of their divisions. Pittsburgh, if they continue on their trek of 6-3 and Ben Roethlisberger is really hot, then you can trust them to probably have a bid into the Super Bowl as well. And that's pretty much it. Like, I understand Cincinnati's leading the North, but I don't know. Andy Dalton just doesn't seem to me like a Super Bowl bound quarterback, but that's why they play the game. But I really think that when you have 3 other surefires in Indy, New England, and Denver, and then another possible with Pittsburgh if they continue their hot streak, that it kind of crowds out Cincinnati from having any place in the conversation. But a very good win for the Giants, or for the Colts. A very rough loss for the Giants, even despite the late offensive production. And both teams will be moving forward, hoping to continue or hoping to, get better or continue their streak. In the case of the Colts, they are on a bye week, and the Giants are heading out to Seattle. So it does not get easier for the New York Giants, and it gets a lot easier for the Colts because they don't have to play anybody next week. Speaking of bye weeks, I'm getting hit hard in week 10 in the fantasy world. I'll tell you more about it right after this. It's the Raymond Simms Show on the Coliseum Sports Network. Raymond Simms Show here on the Coliseum Sports Network. Just got done talking Colts and Giants from Monday night. We'll have college football talk for you tomorrow as the college football playoff rankings for the second week are released, and we can all complain about the rankings and how good they are, how awful they are. Last week, a lot of the controversy was the committee adding Ole Miss into the equation. So you had 3 SEC teams in there. Well, Ole Miss made the case a lot easier for them to be kicked out of the top 4 rankings, and Oregon making the case for them to get in. We'll see what the committee thinks, and we'll talk about it tomorrow here on the Raymond Simms Show on Spreaker.com and the Coliseum Sports Network. In the meantime, I know they always say people don't care about your fantasy team, but I'm sure you care about your fantasy team, don't you? And I'm sure that you're going through a rough patch such as myself. I mean, if you look at all the fantasy players and you even it out, half of us are below 500. My team, I'm in 2 leagues. One with my father and his friends, and then another one is a WIU alumni league. Well, one division's alumni, one division is still current students. And I'm doing pretty well. I actually haven't checked now that I think about it, the alumni league. I'm doing pretty well in that one. But no, I probably lost in that one now that I think about it. Just some rough performances from a number of players. But the alumni one I'm still doing well in. I'm like in second place or whatever because the guy ahead of me so good. And in the other league I'm in with my dad and his friends, that's the team that I focus on more than anything. And I tried to make sure I drafted as carefully as possible and made sure that, I found all the right players. But it still hasn't gone the way I expected. There's a lot of good competition in that league this year as far as how people drafted. So, with that being said, in the division I'm in, it's actually a very tight race, like coming into this week, it was all the teams were at, or the best two teams, me and the team I was tied with, we were at 500. That's how tough the divisions have been this year, even though they're faring a lot better over in the other division. So I come in, and, we're going through bye weeks here. I got a couple of important players out, Calvin Johnson, Aaron Rodgers. But I think the lineup I had set up, I thought I was ready to go. I thought I was going to handle business against my opponent. Coming out of the 1 o'clock games, I was in the lead, and it looked like I could hold on and get the victory if I got through the next cycle of games. And then the Pittsburgh game happened later that night, which had Antonio Brown showing out, and that's when I knew I lost. And so I ended up losing the game, and so now I'm back under 500. I keep getting to 500. I can't get over it, and it's crazy. And if I thought this last week was rough, it's going to get rougher this week. I have a lot of players on bye here in week 10, and I'm struggling with figuring out how I'm going to combat that and still field a competitive team. But I already made a waiver claim for a running back because that's what I need, or else I'm going to have to play a running back this week that's on a bye. Going to have to make a play in free agency on a waiver claim, and hopefully I can find some relief out there, because routinely, especially over the past couple of years, the running back situation in our league is very thin, because there's a number, how many teams are in the league and how hard it is for running backs to really get points compared to some of the other positions. I know that yards and touchdowns can really factor in big if you get a good enough running back. But once you get towards the bottom tier of running backs, it's scraping the bottom of the barrel. So I'm kind of in trouble with that. But hopefully I'll persevere. I'm not losing faith in my team. I'm still very confident with the way I draft and the way that I claim players off waivers. I'm not much of a trader. So, I'm optimistic here like any other football coach would be, except in this case, it's fantasy football, and I'm just trying to put a random lineup together, hoping that it generates the maximal number of points for me to defeat my opponent. Joe Madden Talk after the break here. It's the Raymond Simms Show on the Coliseum Sports Network. Raymond Simms Show here on the Coliseum Sports Network on the home stretch of an abbreviated show today. I honestly didn't have much for you today, but I still wanted to get on the air here and talk to you guys. I'm really, enjoying doing this show, and I don't want to be taking any days off here. Yeah, look at me sounding like a rapper. No days off. Hashtag no days off. But, so this is a 30-minute show today, and I'm going to, usually I cut out maybe 5 minutes before the top of the hour or 2 minutes before. But I'm going to go here to the edge here. I want to get in some Joe Madden talk. Finally introduced as the Chicago Cubs manager after a lot of speculation during the World Series and a couple of days after it. I, for one, I'm trying to couch my comments on the Cubs hiring such a good manager so as to not come off as trying to heap too much praise on what should be a rival of mine. I have grown up on the South Side for over a decade. I was born into a White Sox fan base, so I got to show my appreciation. But at the same time, I'm not from Chicago, so I still am willing to be objective about both of these teams here. But at the same time, let's not get too excited here. But it's very hard not to, because Joe Madden has been such a transcendent manager in Major League Baseball. He did a lot with a little down there in Tampa in terms of resources and market size and player skill, and he was able to turn them into a constant contender. I mean, of course, everybody remembers they made the World Series, but at the same time, Joe Madden, with the help of Andrew Friedman at GM and a loyal owner, bless his heart, in Sternberg, I don't remember his first name, for hanging in there in Tampa. But so it was a group effort. But Joe Madden, he's done a lot with the little, and he's done what he could, and he has made the Tampa Bay Rays into a constant contender each year. Maybe they don't make the playoffs every year. I mean, it's hard to get into the playoffs in Major League Baseball. Yes, even with the new playoff format, it's still difficult. And every year, instead of like it was early on when they were the Devil Rays, where it's like, oh, the Devil Rays, they're going to be at the bottom. Those are some easy wins. Now every year it's like, oh, can the Rays make this run? Can insert pitcher here, because they have a lot of them come through. Can he be the ace for this team to get them into the playoffs? How are they going to hold up against the against the American League East? I almost said AFC East, getting my sports confused there. But Joe Madden has really did a lot for the Rays with the little. Now he's going to a place where there's developing talent and there's a lot of money to go around. And there's a very loyal, fervent fan base who is willing to buy into what Joe Madden is selling. And that makes for a very perfect sort of marriage, so to speak. And there's probably some detractors out there. But for me, I can't see any other way of this going than a success, or maybe like just okay, maybe like he'll make a couple of playoff appearances and they'll be really competitive every year. Maybe that's where it could level out, but for the most part, I think this will go well, and I can only hope that the White Sox ever make a move like this. I mean, maybe I want a little more talent, because Robin Ventura is cool. I think he's done a decent job, give or take some in-game managing, but when the Cubs get a huge hire in Joe Madden, and you can't help but be happy for them and wish them the best, while hoping your team will be able to make a move like that moving forward. I'll probably get into some more Joe Madden talk. I'm not quite sure what else there could be to say until pitchers and catchers report, but I know a lot of people were gushing over that press conference, and how could you not? I put Joe Madden up there with Mike Tomlin and a couple of people I can't think of like managers or coaches that you would just do anything for, like even impossible stuff. If they motivated you to like get into a small bottle or a model airplane, you would try all your all to get into there. Maybe John Wooden, Phil Jackson, those are names like that. What are some names? You know what? I'll talk about that tomorrow. What are some coaches that can really motivate you to just run through a wall and you would gladly do it? I think that would be a great discussion for tomorrow. I'll also talk some NBA and some college football. But in the meantime, have a wonderful day, everybody. This has been the Raymond Simms Show on the Coliseum Sports Network.